How many times have you run into a situation in your shop where you needed 3 hands and you only had 2? Today we're going to show you in our cool tool segment the solution and the answer to your problem. Welcome back. Recently, working on a big project that I had come to the shop, I had to cut some tongue and groove in some really long boards, like 10 and 12 feet. A bit of a difficult thing to do. When you only have 2 hands, sometimes you got to have 3. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is that third hand. It's called a featherboard. And what happens is when I'm running a board against my fence that's real long, it tends to want to wander away from the fence a little bit. Not so much an issue on a short board. When you got something really long, it wants to wander off. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how am I going to hold this board tight against my fence so that my cut ends up being in a perfectly straight line? Featherboards are the key. And all a featherboard does is it gives you an opportunity to take a board like this and compress it up nice and tight against your fence. And this particular one, I like these with the soft feathers on it here. They're really nice. And obviously I had to take my riving knife out to do it. I took my guard off so I could run that board through like that. And this is literally one of the cutoffs from one of the pieces that we did. So being real long, I had to hold it against the fence. So what I did is I put a featherboard on the outbound side of it like that, holding it against the fence, and I'm pushing it in there, compressing the fingers to hold it tight against the fence. And being that this is not a cut that's going to separate the board into 2 pieces, it's only going to draw a line down the center. I can put one on the outfeed side to maximize the amount of pressure I've got against my fence. And on the inbound side, I've got a different one here. This is a really cool one by JessEm. Being that the boards are pretty tall, and they're up on their edge like that, so they're tall. This has got basically 2 boards on it that I can compress into the piece to hold it on there. It's got a lower one and an upper board. So now I've got that vertical element coming into play for me as well. And I know I can make this go on here. There we go. Now we've got a much taller featherboard holding our board nice and tight into our fence. And what I'm wanting to do there is I'm wanting to keep it from wandering away from the fence this way. I also want to keep it from falling over this way. So now that I've got that taller board on there, it's supporting it in the vertical as well as on the horizontal. And when I push that board through there, I've got just enough tension on those fingers to hold it nice and tight into that fence. And even if I'm 5 feet back from my saw holding that board, I know and I have assurance with these being in place that my board is going to stay real nice and tight up into that fence. It's going to go all the way through. It's supported all the way out the other end. Works out really, really well. So I've got good straight boards. I've got the finger boards and holding it tight to my fence, 2 different versions of it. That's going to give me a nice straight cut right down the center of my board every single time. If I were going to be making a cut that would take the board into 2 pieces, obviously I wouldn't have the featherboard on the outbound side of it. Being that it's horizontal, or it's vertical rather, I want the taller featherboard on the inbound side of it. If I were going to have this, if I were running shorter pieces, I might get a lot closer to my blade, so it's tight up next to my blade right there like that. Then I can run anything that's a long vertical piece, like this piece of cool Purple Heart here. I'm all the way back here. I have a hard time holding that tight against that fence. If I get those featherboards engaged, all I've got to do is feed it through. They're going to hold it nice and tight to that fence. I'm going to get a nice straight line. I don't have to be right up on that board. I don't have to call somebody else and say, come help me run this stuff. I run it through just like that. We've got our slot cut right down the center of that board, thanks to that third hand, the featherboard. Works great for horizontal stuff where I'm cutting it, or rather vertical, where I'm cutting in the vertical on the tall side. If I'm going to cut something that's going to go on the face, and I'm going to split that board into a couple of different pieces. Let's get this one out the way. If I'm going to cut something like this, I don't need that vertical element taken care of. All I need is this one. If I'm going to split that board apart, I'm going to get this on there. I'm going to hold it nice and tight up to my board. And then when I go through, it's going to hold it going in. There we go. I'm not going to put anything on the outbound side because those boards are going to be split into two pieces. And if I bind up that post-cut part of that saw curve, it binds it into the blade. I risk the opportunity to have a real kickback happen. I don't want to do that. So I'm only going to support that board on the inbound side, going through like this to make it work. Works really good. Again, one of the issues that comes into play is how wide a board you can cut on your saw with a featherboard that fits in your T-slot here. So with this one, you know, there's a limit to how far I can cut. If I had to cut a wider board in half, this doesn't have the capacity width-wise to take care of that situation. So what I can do, I go over to this one. Let's say I've got a wider board that I'm going to split and I can't get my other featherboard into this T-slot. This one is a really cool mechanism. So it's got these real strong magnets in the bottom of it. I put it in there, get it into play, apply the tension to the feathers, turn the magnets on, and now my piece is right there. And boy, this is solid as a rock. That really does a great job. It's holding my board nice and tight to my fence, allowing me to push it through. So basically with this, I've got almost infinite capacity away from my fence to hold that board nice and tight to my fence. Works out really, really good. Easy to remove. You turn the magnets off. It comes off your table. Away you go. So we've got a magnet-driven featherboard holding our piece into our fence. We've got the ones that are going to fit in the T-slot. So I can do both a horizontal board and a vertical board with the double tier version. And we've got the Featherboard Pro that'll sit in there and get us close. So there's different applications for all of them. I like all three of them. I use them all the time. They're fantastic tools. It gives you that third hand in the shop. It gives you that assurance that your board is going to be held nice and tight to your fence. The downside of it is obviously you've got to take your guard and your riving knife off if you're doing something that's going to be vertical or a non-pass-through, a non-cut-through piece on it. But featherboards, they're a great third hand to have in your shop. We just talked about all the featherboards that I like to use here in the shop. This is one of my favorites. It's a Mag Pro. The thing that's neat about that is the magnets are what hold it down to the deck on your machine, whether you're running it through a table saw, a shaper, router table, what have you. This one is the Bow Feather Pro. And what's neat about that is these hard foam feathers are able to be replaced in the event that you should run it into your saw. Real good. It does a great job of holding stuff down, locks into your T-slot really, really well. So use that one a lot. And then the JessEm version here, what I like about that is it's two-tiered. So it gives you a little bit of an elevated control mechanism for holding your board against your fence. Real good tool as well, and fits right down into your T-slot. I picked up all of these down at Woodcraft. Great store for your woodworking needs. So go there and check them out or check them out online. Great stuff. Featherboards, the best third set of hands that you can get in your shop that doesn't talk back and they do exactly what you ask them to do.